Hey everyone, it's Julie Young for Korean American Story and Not Your Average. And tonight, I think I have my most special guest that I've ever had. I'm with H.J. Lee, who is an avid runner, a father, a husband, and the founder of KoreanAmericanStory.org, to be official. Thanks for being here,
Well,
H.J.
thanks for having me.
On this side of the camera, because you're always here.
Yeah, it is kind of weird.
But so last week we were filming Not Your Average with Jay Lee, and who's the chef at Rice and Gold. And afterwards, you were talking to him about how you both grew up in Queens, Jamaica, Queens, and how his description of growing up there was essentially the same as yours, but 20 years apart?
Yeah, I was there in
1973.
1973.
Yeah.
He was there in 90s, I think.
Which is crazy. And so that just made me think, wait a minute, why have we never had HJ on Not Your Average? Because first of all, you're not your average. You started Korean American Story. And also, how interesting is that 20 years later, you know, the experience is essentially the same for a young Korean American guy like growing up in Jamaica, Queens, right? So let's start from the beginning, like I always do. So you're born in Korea.
Yeah, I was born in Korea in 1962.
And you came here with your family.
I came to this country in 1973.
And so how long do you think it took you to not feel just Korean and start feeling Korean American?
Oh, probably not until I got much older, because it's an issue of self-identification, right? I was always made to feel other growing up. I guess I never thought about Korean American identity until much later in my life, I would say. I think maybe college is when I really noticed myself communing with a lot of other Koreans. Up until that point, I would say that I didn't really go out of my way seeking Korean friends. It happened by default because I would go to Korean churches, meet, have friends, and they were good friends, but I didn't really go out seeking it. It just kind of happened.
Right.
But in college, you have a choice.
Right.
Like, I didn't go to church. I'm too busy studying. But I found myself seeking that community because I guess I didn't have it. And it wasn't until it was gone that I noticed I was missing it.
Yeah, that's
you know?
oftentimes the case. Where did you go to college?
I went to Columbia College.
And what were you studying?
I was studying pre-med like every other Korean kid in the 1980s. But I switched to East Asian Studies back. I graduated in 84. So by the time I graduated, I was an East Asian Studies major.
How did your parents feel about that?
That's a good question. So in my family, I guess we didn't really discuss a lot of these things, and I internalized a lot of things that I think is what they want. But without really having full discussion about it. So then I've had internal discussions with myself, where I would have this conversation with my dad. Like I'd say, Dad, I don't want to be a doctor. And then he'll say this, and I say this. And, I had this thing going on in my head for, I would say, a couple of years. And finally, I just mustered up enough courage, and I went to my father and said, I don't think I could do this. I don't think I want to be a dad. And he looked at me and he goes, what took you so long?
Wow.
I was like, what? I was like, no, that's not what you're supposed to say.
Yeah, that's
you're
not
supposed
how it
to
played
say,
out in my
exactly,
head.
that's not how it played out.
Wow.
I was like, whoa, that's kind of
amazing.
Yeah, that was kind of odd, actually.
So full acceptance.
Yeah, pretty much. And they said, you should do what you really want to do.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. That was the other problem. It's like, what is that?
Right.
You wish for freedom and you get it, and you're like, what do I do with this?
Right.
So that was hard. So for me, I started to just kind of think about what is it that I enjoy doing. And I really enjoyed reading stuff, and I started studying East Asian culture a little bit more. I started to take classes like landscapes and gardens and Japanese and Chinese poetry.
So when you're in college, you find sort of a Korean community, would you say? And how did that help shape your identity?
I think, honestly, I don't think I was a very pensive person back then. I wasn't really fully awakened to my consciousness as a mature human being, I would say, until after college. So a lot of it, I think, was just intuitive. Like, I just did what felt right.
Right.
Without fully understanding why.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's only in retrospect that I think back and I think, oh, that's what was going on. I was looking for a community. But honestly, at the time, I don't think I thought about it. So I was also in a ultimate frisbee team, so that was a big part of my life as well. So they became my family as well. But I also had a compartmentalized bunch of Korean friends where we ate ramen noodles and kimchi jjigae and all that, and then
But so are there any other like significant memories that you have from that time in your life, like in college, undergrad, that you think were significant?
Yeah, lots.
That helped really shape you.
Are we going there?
I mean, it's up to you. It's up to you.
Oh.
It's up to you.
I think I have to kind of, honestly, I think fully explain who I am. I think you have to understand the mistakes that I've made in my life. And I think that fully defines who I've become. And I think that's the reason why I think I have a very strong sense of empathy for people who are struggling, who may make mistakes in their lives and such. So I would say that drugs were a big problem for me in college. I think the biggest problem, was with cocaine. I think that was really the most insidious drug that really affected me. Also, like just general lack of maturity. So I look back and I think to myself, my God, I don't think I would have really liked this guy. I don't know. At least this is in retrospect, right? So it's really hard to say.
Yeah.
I must not have been terrible because I had friends. But maybe it's just I'm just being overly critical. But I do feel that there was a lot of mistakes that I've made. I could have been so much nicer to people, and I probably really should have done a lot less drugs.
So when did that start, though?
I would say in college, kind of looking back at it, I think it probably had a lot to do with my avoidance of dealing with, what am I going to do? Like, what am I doing? Just not knowing and understanding where I was going. And that provided a lot of pressure for me, a lot of stress. And I often think to myself, it's such a first world problem. Like there's people starving and stuff.
Right.
But I've also come to appreciate that even though it's not life or death, the struggle is real, and I think that's true for many kids as well these days. Yeah. And you may not think of it as like, what do you have parents who pay for your college, you have everything you want to eat, whatever it is that you need, you got it. Right. What are you stressed out about? Right? And that's one perspective. But when you're in that situation, I think it's the weight of expectations perhaps that you've placed upon yourself.
I was going to say the pressure comes from yourself.
Yeah.
How much did it impact your life?
It impacted me greatly.
But you were able to stay in college the whole time?
Yeah, barely, I would say. Okay. But yeah, one day I was like completely coked out, lying in my living room, thinking to myself, I'm going to die. My heart is just racing like crazy. And I think I even told my roommate, I'm like, you got to take me to the hospital, And just that experience of being so low like that, where you just are so ashamed of yourself afterwards. I think that was kind of the beginning of turnaround time for me, where I decided that, basically when you hit the rock bottom, you know it. And you're like, God, this is terrible. This is not where I want to be.
Right.
And I think that was the beginning of the turnaround for me.
Were your parents aware at any point, or?
Well, there was this one time, I had a little vial. I came home, and my dad found it. Wow. And he's like, and I looked at him, lied to his face. I said, my friends. And my dad just looked at me, walked out the room. But he didn't say a word. But the look on his face,
said it all.
My God.
Said it all.
Oh, said it all. And that's something that I wish I could do all over again in my life.
So how did you recover?
I think it was just cold turkey, pretty much.
Wow.
I mean, really.
You just...
Pretty much. I don't think there's any other way.
Did you have a lot of friend support?
Actually, I had to abandon all my friends, actually.
That makes sense.
For me to survive.
Right.
And I felt bad about that too. Because I felt like I abandoned all my friends at the time.
Right.
But I just needed to do that in order for me to survive.
Yeah.
I mean, literally survive.
Yeah.
And I wish I could have been more articulate, more caring, and be able to explain what I was going through. But in reality, I'm just trying to live.
You're just trying to live. Yeah.
And so that, I didn't feel good about either. So there are a lot of things that I didn't feel good about, and it's just something that I had to do. I'm not proud of it, But it is what makes me who I am today.
Right. And you learned from it, obviously.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that you share it and can share it is so caring, really. Like, you sharing that, like, how many people honestly will see this and be like, what the fuck? Like, they're gonna rewind and be like, what did he just say? But I think it's so important to have, older generations share these stories, because a lot of times younger generations just think like, oh, you're far removed and you don't get it. But we do.
Yeah,
right?
we do.
We get it.
Yeah.
And I think also, like, a lot of younger generations have problems with drugs, like serious problems. And I think sometimes they don't get different drugs, but and they don't get how much of a problem it is. Yeah. So I think if more people talked about it would.
It's insidious.
Yeah.
It's seductive and it's beautiful.
It's an escape.
That's what makes it so difficult to get out of it.
Yeah.
And that's why I said, in the beginning of the conversation, I said, it's hard for me to be too judgmental on others. Because honestly, I've been at the rock bottom. If you've seen me, I've seen myself there. So it's hard for me to, be critical or judgmental about other people and their mistakes.
Which is one of the best things about you now.
I guess so, yeah. I guess so.
So that experience helped you to become that way. I want to fast forward a little bit into how you got the idea to start Korean American Story.
So, as it happens often in, different careers, I hit a point where I was laid off from a job. And so it gave me a chance to really think about it. I start to really have this sense of anxiety in my life. And it's going to sound odd, but ever since I was young, I've always felt that I was special. I felt like I had a special mission in life. And I thought I was going to do something great that's going to change the world in some way. But then I'm like, I haven't done anything. Clock's ticking, right? So I went to my pastor at the time, Tia Kreitz, who's a terrific pastor. And I said to her, and I'm telling her this feeling. And as I'm talking about it, something occurred to me. What I realized at that point was that even though I wasn't talking about becoming a billionaire or anything like that, it was just about making some impact in the world. So it was kind of altruistic.
Yeah.
But I remember at the time thinking that even that was actually kind of selfish thought in my mind. Meaning it was about me, how I'm changing the world, how I'm impacting the world. It's about my work and the results that I will achieve. So for me, as a Christian person, I start to really think about what is it that God's charging me to do, as opposed to what is it that I think I need to do. It's a slight shift in perspective, but that helped me to get rid of my anxiety. Because I realized, who's to say that being a good husband for those years, raising children, providing for them, serving a church community for many years as I did, who's to say those aren't significant?
Right.
Like, why are you diminishing these things, right? Maybe that is what God's will for you is. Why are you making it less than what it could be?
Right.
So I thought, oh, okay. And so when I came to accept that anxiety just washed out of me. And I was like, this is good. 7 years or so later, I get the same sense of kind of what I call calling to start Korean American Story. And it's a feeling, right? But I think the difference this time is that it wasn't about me wanting to impact the world in some way. It was really about me feeling like I am being called to do something because there's need that needs to be addressed. Although we're not a Christian organization by any means, but that is kind of the genesis of what I felt and what I felt to do as a man of faith. And that's why in our mission statement, we're very specific about wanting to make sure that the voices of those whose voices have not been heard before are included, that we're intentionally an inclusive organization, right? All that is in there because of at least my understanding of my faith as being an inclusive, for me, my God is an inclusive God. It's a reflection of that.
Yeah.
That's how the idea came about. As to what it was to become, it actually comes from my Columbia core curriculum education. I remember reading stories about the Medici family in Italy during the Renaissance, where they would actually commission works of art and they would pay people. And, it was a symbiotic relationship where they would get works of art and then they in turn would support the artists. And I thought, I love art, I love literature, I love things, but I'm not necessarily the creator. But I do know what I think is needed. So I knew I wanted to do something within the Korean American community and about our stories. I wasn't sure what it was going to be. That took a little time to really fine tune it.
What about the Korean grocer story?
Yeah, that had a lot to do with it, and that has to do with the image that I've always carried in my head, which is coming home one morning from Columbia, when I was at Columbia, like twilight of the morning, and I just had this image of this Korean ajashi sitting in a box, polishing the apple, arranging it. And prior to that, it was all just bodegas. There were no Korean grocers back then. In the 80s, it was just beginning. So watching that man put that down, for some reason I had that image in my head that I carried with me. And for the longest time, I would think to myself, wow, that's such a quintessential immigrant experience. Whether that or whether it's a dry cleaners, whatever it is, that image would speak volumes. And that's when I start to really think about the power of image. And I think the second time was in Chinatown in the 90s. It was a street fair, and they had these boards, and these little Chinese ladies had pictures of Chinese railroad workers with coolie, the coolies who had heads shaved off with the ponytails, very stereotypical stuff. But it was a photo. And I said to them, like, what is this? And they said, well, it's Continental Railroad workers. They built the railroad. I knew that, but seeing those images was so impactful for me. And the other thing I realized is that these Chinese ladies spoke to me in perfect English. And so you're like, wow, Chinese have been here for a long time, right? So you start really thinking about, what my stereotypes are, what the impact of our communities might have had, celebrating that, preserving it, and being able to see it and explain it through images and writing and all that, I thought would be really powerful. So I think that's how it started, the genesis of that.
And so now we're about to celebrate our 9th year. And how do you feel like looking on the past 9 years from your idea, your spark of an idea?
I'm so pleased that so many people, I think, have really come on board. I know it's not, for many people, it's not just about the gig.
Right. I'd say most of the people involved with us.
It's just not about the gig.
Mission.
So I'm extremely pleased that, there's so many people that have really contributed.
Would you ever have imagined, like your 27-year-old self, that you would be the founder of a nonprofit organization?
No, never. I mean, as I told you, I was a complete asshole at 27. I mean, really, self-absorbed, myopic, self-satisfying person that I can't believe I was.
Yeah, but it's so amazing, right? Like how, so I think about like you youngins who are like, think that you know what you want to do or be, and then you get in your 30s and you're like, oh, my life is not the way I thought it was going to be, right? And then it's like, dude, you have no idea what you're going to be doing in 10 years, and it's probably going to be something you never even thought of, right?
But also I think we have opportunities for several iterations of careers.
Yeah. H-Day, tell me something nobody knows about you. Well, I think you just revealed it earlier.
Yeah, I think that was enough, actually.
Yeah, that might actually be enough for that one.
I think everyone knows about it.
Yeah, everyone knows that.
Yeah, I think everyone knows that.
Everyone knows that you can cook like up a storm, and that you know your wines, and that you can't go out to dinner without H-J like giving a whole like breakdown of every ingredient.
All right, you don't need to embarrass me.
But what did we not know about you?
Yeah, I guess there's a certain part of me that still is trying to forgive myself for all the mistakes I've made that I didn't even realize that maybe I haven't fully forgiven myself. And I would say that's probably accurate.
It's a hard one.
Yeah, that is a hard one.
So I think I already answered what everybody knows about you. But is there anything else that you want to add to that?
I wear toe socks.
Oh, that's right. He wears toe socks. We all know that too.
Everywhere.
Those are some good ones. Okay. All right, but AJ, I'm actually really glad that we did this because I do think that it was, I know you were a little bit hesitant to do this because you're like, I don't know if people are going to care, but really like, I know that everybody here was like, what, you know? And I think it is so important to share the vulnerability that we've experienced to help us get to where we are. And obviously, Korean American Story is an amazing thing that you have birthed. So I'm really glad that you're on this.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Cheers. Drinking with Julie.
Cheers.
Thanks.